My parents locked me in the basement for 9 days, then said I needed discipline. What I did when I got out made the whole family panic. By the 9th day, the cold had stopped biting. It was as if my body finally accepted that warmth wouldn't return. My fingertips, numb, fumbled over the chipped edges of the cinder block wall I'd memorized by touch. There were no distractions, no screens, no clocks ticking, no sunlight creeping through slits in a curtain. Just the rhythmic hum of the house above me and the occasional thud of footsteps, a chair sliding across tile, laughter at night. They were living normally, as if I didn't exist, like I was just noise they'd managed to shut behind a door. All this because I'd said no to the sudden curfew, no to handing over my phone without explanation, no to the constant monitoring, the accusations, the suffocating control they disguised as concern. I raised my voice once, and that was all it took. My father's expression didn't crack. He didn't shout back. He just said, "You need discipline." And my mother silently went to unlock the basement door. As if it was rehearsed. I was pushed. Not with force, not violently, but with finality. Like a prisoner escorted into solitary confinement. My phone stayed on the kitchen counter. My bag was never returned to me. And they closed that door without a word. The first few hours I shouted, pounded the door until my knuckles split, demanded an explanation, screamed apologies I didn't mean. I cried until there was nothing left but a dull ache in my head. By day 2, the only sound I made was breath. They fed me once a day, always cold. A slice of lunch meat on dry bread, a bruised apple, sometimes a handful of cereal in a plastic bowl with no spoon, always tossed down the stairs like a reminder. You're not starving. You're just learning. A bottle of water left on the floor, sometimes half full. Once it was already opened. I drank it anyway. I started counting things, cracks in the floor, nails on the wooden beam overhead, the different patterns my breath made in the dust. My mind didn't go blank. It sharpened. You learn something terrifying about yourself in the dark. When no one is coming to save you, your brain starts working on a new level. You plan, you observe, you wait. The first night I heard them laugh during a movie, I stopped crying. I started recording. My phone was gone, but the digital recorder I used for school projects was still in the bottom of my hoodie, tucked in the stitched hem from when I'd tried to hide it during class presentations. A mistake I'd made months ago. A mistake that saved me. The battery was half dead, the storage almost full, but I made it work. I captured them walking past the door, my father's voice grumbling. Let her think about what she said. I got the clink of their forks during dinner, my mother humming along to the radio. One night, they even had guests over. And while I sat beneath them in silence, they laughed with people who didn't know they were dining above a prisoner. I stopped being afraid. I started being ready. I documented the food, took photos of the bruises from where I'd slipped on the concrete on day 4. I whispered timestamps into the recorder when I could hear the microwave beeping upstairs, counting the hours I went without a word, without acknowledgement. I kept my mind clear. I refused to go insane. On the morning of day 9, the door creaked. Light bled through. My mother's face peeked in, the smell of coffee on her breath. You can come out now, she said, like it was over, like we were done with the time out. I didn't speak. I walked up the stairs, slow and calm, past her, into the kitchen like nothing had happened. My body ached, but I kept my back straight. I sat at the table. My father was reading the paper, flipping through the pages like it was Sunday. Like this was normal. Next time, don't raise your voice, he said without looking up. We love you, but you have to learn there are consequences. Sure, I said, my voice flat. I understand now. They didn't notice I didn't eat the food they offered. They didn't question the sudden quiet. They thought they had broken me, but I was gathering. By noon, I was in my room. The moment I was alone, I connected the recorder to my old laptop, the one they thought was broken. It still worked enough to transfer files. I compressed them, named them properly, included dates, times, notes. I took photos of the bruises again, now faded yellow and green. I typed a report, detailed, clinical, free of emotion. It wasn't a cry for help. It was evidence. I uploaded everything to a new drive, not my email, not anything they could trace. I used a public form. the kind you find on official websites when reporting neglect or abuse. It asked if I was in danger. I checked no. It asked if I had documentation. I said yes. There was a space to write a statement. I didn't write a plea. I wrote a timeline. I sent it at 2:43 p.m., then I called the police directly. I didn't fake hysteria. I didn't cry or plead. I told them exactly what happened. The officer on the other end didn't interrupt. He asked questions, dates, names, my location. I gave everything. He said someone would come by soon. I thanked him and hung up. Then I waited. Dinner was chicken and rice. My father poured himself a glass of non-alcoholic wine. My mother lit a candle. The table was set as if we were the perfect suburban family. I sat in my usual chair. I didn't speak unless spoken to. My little brother asked if we could go to the movies that weekend. My father said maybe. My mother laughed and said, "We'll see how everyone behaves this week." She looked at me. I smiled. There was a knock at the door. 3 sharp raps. Not the sound of a neighbor or a friend. It was official, heavy, measured. My mother blinked. My father frowned. "I'll get it," he said, rising, napkin still in hand. The door opened. "Mr. Darnell?" a voice asked, clear, firm, male. "Yes?" The badge came next. Real, gleaming, unmistakable. "We received a report. We need to speak with your daughter." They didn't even have time to lie. The officers stepped in. One went straight to me. "You all right?" he asked, eyes scanning my face. I nodded once. "Everything's ready," I said. "Files, photos, audio." He turned to the others. "She's been documenting. 9 days." That's when my mother dropped her fork. The metal clink rang louder than anything she'd said to me in weeks. My father started to speak, something about a misunderstanding, family matters, private discipline. But no one listened. Because I didn't just survive. I recorded. I reported. I acted. And now they would have to explain it all to someone they couldn't manipulate, someone who didn't live under their roof. No more silence, no more control. And that was only the beginning. The living room transformed in minutes. The moment the officers crossed the threshold, the entire mood collapsed. Gone was the illusion. No more smiles, no more fake normalcy. Just tension filling every inch of space between bodies. My mother stood frozen near the dining table, hands twitching at her sides. Her lips parted like she couldn't decide whether to argue or cry. My father, rigid and red-faced, looked like he was holding back an explosion that had no clean detonation. My brother stared, confused, his fork midair. He was too young to understand it all, but not too young to sense that something irreversible had just snapped. 2 officers stayed inside. One was already in the hallway, motioning for a female officer who'd been waiting just beyond the door to enter. She nodded at me, not warmly, not coldly, just professionally, and led me to the hallway with a brief, "Let's talk somewhere private." I walked past my parents without looking at either of them. My father tried to speak, but one of the officers cut in. "She doesn't have to respond. Not now. You'll both be interviewed separately." They were losing control by the second. Every protocol shredded another layer off their facade. The officer led me into the downstairs den. Ironic, really. The one room they never used. Dust coated the corners of the floor, and the furniture still smelled like storage. I sat down on the couch while she pulled a small notepad from her pocket, clicking her pen with one sharp press. Her eyes studied me for a moment. Then she started. "What's your full name and date of birth?" I answered clearly. "How long were you in the basement?" 9 days, I said without hesitation. "No breaks? No time outside that room?" "No. Only when they opened the door and said I could come back up." "What did you eat?" "Cold leftovers. Cereal. Once raw pasta. Sometimes just bread." "Bathroom access?" "No plumbing down there. I had to use a bucket." Her pen didn't pause once. Her questions came fast, but never insensitive. She was methodical, focused. I respected it. She was treating this like fact, not drama. "Did they threaten you?" "Not with words. But when they put me down there, they said I was lucky it wasn't worse." "Any physical harm?" "I fell once. Hit my shoulder. They didn't check on me. Didn't care." "You mentioned photos. Can I see them?" I opened the folder on the flash drive I'd carried in my sock, handed it to her. She inserted it into her department-issued tablet, and began cycling through the images. Close-ups of the bruising, timestamps overlaid, wide shots of the basement conditions, mold creeping up one wall, the pile of dishes with crusted food, the makeshift toilet set up in the corner with a curtain made from an old towel. She said nothing. She just scrolled, her eyes tightening only once, at the image of the food bowl lying overturned near the stairs. That had been day 6 when they'd missed a day. Or maybe forgotten. Maybe not. What about recordings? Audio only, no video. She clicked through the folders. I'd labeled each file by date and content. Day 3, footsteps dinner above. Day 5, parents talking nighttime. Day 7, visitors no mention of me. She tapped the 7th one. A man's voice laughed. So where's your daughter tonight? My father. Oh, you know, teenagers. Locked in her room being dramatic. Laughter followed. My mother's voice agreed. As long as she stays out of trouble, we let her sulk. The officer tapped pause. That's enough for now. I'm going to copy these to our database. Someone will follow up with forensics and documentation. She stood, stretched her back slightly. They'll interview your parents. Then you'll be taken in for a temporary evaluation and safety placement. Don't panic. It's protocol. We don't leave minors in hostile environments, even overnight. I nodded. I didn't need to be told twice. By the time we returned to the living room, both my parents were seated on the couch, a third officer looming nearby. My mother looked like she'd been crying, but was trying to hide it behind a shell of composure. My father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, hands resting on his knees like he was waiting for a verdict. She's leaving with us, the officer said, loud enough for everyone to hear. There will be a temporary shelter assessment, medical review, then caseworker placement. Charges pending. No, my mother said, too fast. She's our daughter. This is just a misunderstanding. She's our responsibility, my father added, almost growling. The officer barely blinked. Not anymore. Not until this is reviewed fully. And that was it. There was no scene, no outburst. Just the quiet sound of shoes on the tile as I walked to the front door, passing the hallway photos. The same ones they showed guests with pride. School awards, family vacation pictures, a graduation snapshot with forced smiles. All lies. Outside, the cruiser waited with the back door open. I stepped in without needing to be asked. The female officer followed, sitting beside me, not saying much. The car rolled forward, turning the corner, leaving my house, no, their house, behind. The shelter was clean. Quiet. Too quiet, really, but I didn't mind. It didn't smell like mildew or stale food. The woman who greeted us at the intake desk had a clipboard and the kind of calm expression that came from dealing with shattered kids too many times. She didn't ask me to relive everything. She just handed me fresh clothes, pointed to the showers, and said I could take as long as I needed. I stood under the hot water for 23 minutes. Not because I needed it physically, because it was the first time I'd been alone in a room without fear since I'd been locked up. Afterwards, I met with a nurse. She asked questions while taking photos of the bruising, marking each with a sticker, noting dates, nodding at my answers. Then a social worker joined us. Her name was Diane. She didn't speak like she pitied me. She sounded annoyed, but not at me. "You're smart," she said after reading the timeline I gave her. "They underestimated you." "I know. You did the right thing. Every step, I know that too." She smiled for the first time. It didn't last, but it was something. "They're going to try to fight this," she warned. "Say they were just being strict. Claim you were out of control, that this was punishment." "They can say what they want," I said. "I have proof." "Good, because they'll go hard. Lawyers, reputation management. Your job now is to stay calm, stay clean, stay consistent. Let us handle the rest." I stayed 3 nights in the shelter. Each day, someone came with new questions. A psychologist asked about trauma responses, dreams, panic symptoms. A detective reviewed my file again, requesting clarification on audio timestamps. A CPS investigator pulled my school records, talked to teachers, friends, neighbors. I didn't flinch once. The 4th morning, Diane returned with an update. "They're lawyered up, trying to paint this as discipline that got out of hand, saying you had violent outbursts." I didn't respond. I let her continue. "They want visitation. Supervised. The court hasn't approved it yet. They won't get it. I said. She didn't argue. They're trying to reclaim the narrative, I said plainly, but they're not in control anymore. That evening, I was placed with a temporary foster family, an older couple, no kids in the house, quiet people. They didn't ask too much. They gave me space, let me sleep, let me breathe. The first night, I sat by their kitchen window and watched the streetlights flicker on one by one, and I realized something. They were afraid now, and they should be, because this wasn't just about escape. This wasn't about me getting out. It was about what came next. Their community would hear. Their friends would be contacted. The report wasn't just filed with CPS. It went to a public attorney's office. A criminal investigation was now live. My photos were archived, my audio labeled and verified. It wasn't a story anymore. It was a case. They used to laugh above my head while I sat in concrete silence. Now they sat in their pristine kitchen with the blinds drawn, wondering what door would knock next. And I wasn't done. I hadn't even started yet. Court didn't look like I imagined. There were no thunderous speeches, no slammed gavels. Just a stale room, fluorescent lighting, and a judge who didn't smile once. The bench sat higher than everyone else. My parents were there, dressed up like they were attending a church service, like they thought nice clothes could erase the past. My mother wore pearls. My father wore the same tie he used for weddings and funerals. They didn't look at me, not once. I sat beside my appointed advocate, a legal aide who worked pro bono. His briefcase was dented, his shoes scuffed, but he was sharp. He knew the file front to back and carried it like a weapon. He didn't need theatrics. He had the facts, and the facts didn't need dressing up. The state prosecutor went first. They walked the judge through the evidence, the audio, the timestamps, the forensic photos. They showed that this wasn't discipline. It was detainment. It was premeditated isolation without access to sanitation, communication, or safe conditions. There were no objections. Nothing to counter. My parents' attorney stayed seated, flipping through paperwork he already knew wouldn't save them. When it was our turn, my advocate only spoke briefly. This is not a child with behavioral issues. This is a minor who took every legal step to report and document what she endured. She didn't lash out. She didn't run. She followed procedure better than most adults would. He rested his hand on the table, calm, certain. She doesn't need supervision. She needs distance. Then I was called. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I told the court what happened from beginning to end. I described the basement without exaggeration. I explained the recordings. I recited the dates. I answered every question directly. When they asked how I felt during the isolation, I said I felt erased. When they asked why I didn't scream more, I said I knew they weren't listening. And when the judge asked what I wanted now, I didn't hesitate. I want to never go back. The court ruled within the hour. Temporary foster care became permanent emancipation. I was 17, months away from legal adulthood, and I was granted full legal separation. My parents were found liable for unlawful confinement, neglect, and endangerment of a minor. Sentencing would come later, but the ruling was clear. Custody was revoked. Contact was denied. They didn't speak, not even after the decision. They sat like statues, the weight of the outcome still sinking in. Their faces didn't break. Their pride didn't crack. But they knew. They'd lost. After court, I didn't go back to the shelter. Diane arranged for a new placement, an independent living program for teens close to aging out. I had my own small studio unit, basic furniture, a bed, a door with a lock I controlled. I signed my own lease. I picked up a part-time job at a bookstore and enrolled in the community college's online prep courses. I didn't tell anyone from school. I didn't reach out to friends. I wasn't interested in retelling the story to satisfy curiosity. 2 weeks later, a letter came in the mail. The Department of Child Services had forwarded the final hearing transcript. Attached was the sentencing notice. My father received 6 months probation and mandatory counseling. My mother was ordered into a parental rehabilitation program and barred from contact until I reached 18. Neither was imprisoned. That didn't surprise me. The system didn't always punish harshly, especially with first-time offenses and no physical violence, but their records were now marked. Their community would eventually hear. People talk. Neighbors guess. Reputations erode. I folded the letter and burned it in the sink. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to see it again. That part of the story was over. Months passed. My body healed faster than my trust. I got used to being alone. I learned how to cook for one, how to sleep without checking the door twice. I stopped flinching when people raised their voices near me. I started thinking in plans again, class schedules, savings, credit building. For once, my decisions were mine. Then one day in early spring, I got a phone call from Diane. "They've moved," she said. "Your parents sold the house and relocated to a different county." I asked if that changed anything. "No," she said. "Court orders follow them. You're still protected." I thanked her and hung up. That night, I walked to the edge of the neighborhood and looked back at the streetlights. Same pale glow, same empty sidewalks. But it felt different now. Not smaller, not safer. Just finished. The story didn't end with an explosion. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final scream, no apology. They didn't beg. I didn't forgive. I didn't need either, because I got out. And then I proved what they did. I didn't have to hurt them. I didn't need revenge in blood or fire. I survived, with evidence, with clarity, and most importantly, with freedom.